Welcome everybody to the Living Consciously television show, coming to you live from our Denver studios. I am your host and moderator, Coach Steve Toad, also the founder of Conscious Evolution Media, going on almost 12 years and 15,000 plus shows, and we're not counting anymore. We have a very interesting theme for this evening: how quantum jumps can improve your life, and I'm intrigued, curious, and can't wait. Our guest this evening is Cynthia Sue Larson. Welcome to the show, Cynthia.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Thank you for being here. We're going to enjoy it, I'm positive. And let me introduce you to the rest of our cast. Right next to Cynthia to the right is Jamie Lerner, and she's joining us from the Windy City, Chicago. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It is so wonderful to be back.
Awesome. And next to Jamie is Linda Dyer, and she's joining us from a place where the kangaroos never stop roaming around, and that would be Australia. Welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you very much. They are roaming around now. The sun's back out.
All right, great. And next to Linda is Nina Di Verderosa. She's joining us from the city where the lights never go out, and that would be Las Vegas. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Steve. It's wonderful to be here. But the lights are out at the moment because it's during the day, but it's also becoming very, very hot. 98 today.
Good for you. Been raining here constantly every day. And last but not least, we also have Tori Kosicki. He's joining us from the Big Apple, New York City. Welcome to the show, Tori.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Cynthia, and welcome.
So, Cynthia, let's kick it off with, I'm really intrigued about quantum jumping. I've been kind of in and out of quantum theory. Best way would be probably to start the show is to have you explain to the viewers and to us what is quantum jumping.
Well, the way that I like to explain it first is to describe that our real identity has more to do with consciousness than it does with what we think of as our physical bodies. And people that meditate, that do lucid dreaming, or that have had near-death experiences are fully familiar with that, and probably a lot of viewers of this show. And what I mean by this is that when you recognize that you can observe your thoughts, but you're not your thoughts. You can observe your feelings. This is the beginning. It's like a gateway to start recognizing that actually everything that we take for granted about being fixed reality in the classical sense is very different when you start bringing in the quantum view of the world. So, in a nutshell, when I talk about quantum jumping, I literally am talking about experiencing a new physical reality based on an internal change that we can make within ourselves. So I am actually talking about instantaneous transformation. And so it's not just simply a meditation where you're accessing information of a possible parallel self, but it's actually walking into that parallel world. So that's what I mean by it, and it's how I describe it in my book, Quantum Jumps, which is, here's a copy of it, An Extraordinary Science of Happiness and Prosperity. So it's...
Yeah, cool. So when is ever transformation is not instantaneous?
Okay, there was a bit of technical echo there. Can you say that again?
Okay, yeah, that could be. Do you have a headset on?
I'm wearing the headset.
Okay, then it's, is anybody not wearing a headset?
I'm wearing one.
Yeah, that's the only place that it can come from. All right, so can transformation be not instantaneous? I'm just curious about that.
Can it not be instantaneous? I mean, in the sense of, can we have an expectation or a belief in something and then see evidence later, so we don't witness the change right away? Absolutely. Yeah, that's true. So, but if you mean, is there a way that the change could happen gradually? I haven't yet seen that. I haven't seen, that would be like when you have a dimmer switch and the light in the room can go from very bright to very gradually dim. That doesn't usually happen. So these kinds of instantaneous changes really are instantaneous. It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about, being instant, everybody wants everything now, 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 now. So what you're actually happen to be in the right place at the right time, because that's what people are now. What has made people so impatient with themselves?
Well, I think a lot of people make a sort of a spiritual path mistake, myself included. Sometimes we think we know what we want, and pretty quickly I learned that's not the right way to go about doing things, because the truth is our conscious mind is pretty small. It's like a small sliver of the visible spectrum, for example, or any of our senses are very, very tiny little slivers of what's really fully out there. And when you recognize there's such a bigger, vaster awareness that each of us has access to, that's the place that I would like to have making those kind of choices, rather than me thinking I know exactly what I want. I used to go to a women's group, and every year people would get together again and review how they got exactly what they asked for the year before. And instead of being really happy, they'd start off saying like, well, I got exactly what I asked for. Big sigh.
I really want it now.
Yeah, so now I need to fix it.
But let me ask you a question with people that get into an argument, and they've always sort of said it's better to not really argue that fast or to answer those questions, to sit back and wait a little bit. So there's an example of not rushing into something rather than sort of holding back and waiting your turn so you can actually not say things you wish you hadn't said.
Right. Well, that's a good skill as well, just to learn to not jump in and react, but instead be a bigger you. So actually quantum jumping is a good way to recognize that you are a bigger you to begin with, and to try to start practicing that on a regular basis. Oh boy, that you just hit the nail on the head with that one. Because
well, we do that. I mean, we all do that. I'm prize one of that, but I'm teaching myself, and I have over the years, not to do that. So I can just sit back and kind of have a better answer and controlling myself and my feelings rather than rushing into this high blood pressure thing that sort of takes over your body, and to try to calm down and not actually say something I wish I'd never said, because you can't take back what you say.
Right. And something else that I've noticed happens, which is a little bit out there, but it has to do with these shifts in reality, these jumps from one reality to another. Sometimes you can have an argument with someone and you can both be right, even though you're disagreeing with each other. And so I'm going to say that again because I know it sounds bizarre. It comes from this
how about an example? Do you have an example?
Well,
Yeah,
that's an argument.
Give us
a real-life example.
An example would be where you're saying to your sweetie, like I did once, I'm just saying something really nice, and then he responds just indignant, just really upset, and says, how dare you say whatever it was. I don't remember now what it was, but it wasn't anything I said. And then I realized, wow, and I write about this in my books, Reality Shifts, Quantum Jumps. I've written about this for 16 years, and I've done papers at conferences about it.
So let me make sure we understand. So you said something really nice, as far as you could tell, and
Exactly.
then he heard something completely different.
Right.
Okay, got it.
And so it's really two realities. It's like when worlds collide. And I've witnessed other examples that are more benign, where someone's thinking something in their reality, but I hear them actually say it. I see them looking at me, talking to me, like my daughter telling me, I need to use the bathroom, and we're at Disneyland. So I tell her, okay, as soon as I see one, we'll stop. And to me, it's perfectly normal. Then I see one, like, okay, here it is. And she just looks astonished, like, how did you know that I need to use the bathroom? And I said, because just like 2 minutes ago you asked me. and I've been on both sides of that kind of conversation. So I think more people are experiencing these things in recent years. So it's becoming not so much of a fringe kind of an event, but the more we meditate, the more we're on a spiritual path. Or maybe just with things changing in the universe, there are more of us experiencing these parallel realities coming together.
So we're more
think-
fluid, right?
What about
We're
synchronicity?
more fluid in terms of how we're moving in and out of our space with ourselves and other people. Does that resonate with you?
So you're saying when you're fluid?
That we become more fluid in the more conscious that we're able to be, that we're less defensive, we're more connected to ourselves, so we're more fluid, and so we're able to move more with ease in and out of different realities within our
Right.
current and future realities.
Right.
So,
Well, I see. Yeah, exactly. I think if you're getting at the point of, is it beneficial to be aware of these different possible realities that are out there, that sometimes we're touching on several of them and other people are experiencing different ones than we are. That this is a really new concept that's coming, is being introduced thanks to quantum computing. We're going to be seeing a lot more of it thanks to those.
Can you explain a little bit more about quantum? Because I think a lot of people don't quite understand this new word, and it is a new word. It's been coming in a year or 2 years or whatever, but it's a new word that's coming in. Everybody says nobody wants to touch it too much because they're not quite sure what it is and where it's going and what does it really exactly mean before they say it.
Yes, thank you. Well, when I'm talking about quantum phenomena and quantum logic, quantum ways of being and the way reality exists on the quantum level, the huge paradigm shift that's occurring right now is that we're starting to see that quantum logic is the fundamental logic. And so for the last 100 years, when quantum physics was first big on the stage, then people like Einstein and Heisenberg were talking about these teeny tiny little particles, and they were pretty much sweeping that quantum dust under the rug, basically saying most of us don't have to think about some of the bizarre phenomena that occurs on the quantum scale. That bizarre phenomena is totally normal on the quantum scale, and it includes superposition of states. So there would be many possible me's, many possible you's, and right now that is becoming commonplace standard belief by most physicists if you conduct a survey right now. So there's more of a recognition that that is indeed the case, as well as things like entanglement, where quantum particles move together like a flock of birds or a school of fish. They can be coherent, so they move together just perfectly. That's coherent.
Yeah.
And then they're entangled.
Cynthia, are you relating to the fact that we may exist in several realities all at the same time?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay. So earlier I was trying to ask, but I yielded to other cast members. I was asking about synchronicities. How do you relate synchronicities to quantum jumping? That's
a great question. Synchronicity is a good example of the way that we...
What is a synchronicity as far as you can tell?
That's a good place to start. Like, what is synchronicity? And when most people think of synchronicity, they're usually thinking in terms of something is on your mind, and then you hear a song about it, or you're thinking of someone, and then you see them. And it seems like it's much more than just a coincidence. So it's like synchronizing. And to me, when you see a synchronicity like that, then you're totally aware of that kind of coherence. Like you're in a school of fish or a flock of birds. There's a separation, but even if you're separated, you're still together. And I'm using examples from nature because actually the more scientists keep looking at biology, the more they're finding quantum biology, to the point that it made the cover of Nature magazine in 2011. So this is not conjecture, it's not airy-fairy stuff, this is solid science. And
is this why we're having so many changes in our weather and in our earthquakes and in all what's going on in the world that is happening very naturally? None of us are causing it as of people, but the atmospherics are causing it, and whatever we're putting out there in pollution and everything else is changing, right?
Well, there can be a strong connection between ourselves and weather and the earth and pretty much everything. So we're kind of like kindergartners here, preschoolers on the planet, just coming into the awareness that we're able to play with this. And right now, I think there's a little bit of chaos going on. So it can seem sometimes like there's not as much.
A little bit. Okay. That's put it mildly.
If I remember correctly, Cynthia, last time I saw you, didn't you have a background in physicist? in physicist?
Yes, I do. I've got a degree in physics from UC Berkeley, and
right.
Congratulations.
And I meet regularly with physicists and scientists talking about the quantum paradigm here, both at the UC Berkeley campus and just in and around Berkeley. So it's very much a passion.
I got to meet Cynthia a couple of months ago at a mutual friend's house, and we had a really great talk. We had a small little meeting, and you know, what I picked up from that meeting, with that gathering we had that day, is how not fragile. I mean, I'm trying to think of the right word I want to use for the year. How purposeful a quantum jump can be versus just haphazard change in environment. In other words, like if the weather changes, it changes, right? I want to share an experience with you that I had after I met you, and I started practicing this on almost a daily basis. I was diagnosed through a new procedure that I had prostate cancer. It was a new urinalysis that it's not FDA approved yet, but over 1,300 participants who have been through this study, when they come back with a positive reading, they are positive. Okay. I neglected to go for biopsies for the prior 3 years, so at this point I was convinced that there was not a question in my mind with the result of the urinalysis, this experimental urinalysis, that I had prostate cancer, in fact. So after we met in Lori's house in Long Island, I just decided that wasn't going to be my reality anymore. And I can tell you an experience I had in the elevator on my way up to the 11th floor of the doctor's office, the urologist's office. I was literally jumping like an idiot all over the place, imagining myself jumping, flipping, spinning like a monkey all over, literally until I rolled into his office. And while I was waiting for the doctor, and I had a 10:30 in the morning appointment, right? And they sat me down at exactly 10:30. The doctor didn't show up in the room at 10:30, but I did. And what I did is I looked around the room and I looked at all the pictures, and I started moving in my mind. I started moving his pictures around the room. I started putting his degree on the left wall and the right wall, or his coffee cup on the right side and the left side. I started moving the window. I started moving everything. This went on for probably 2 hours that day. He walks into the room and he opens up my results, and well, I was so positive that I was positive. He says, "I have really good news for you, Mr. Kosicki. We have completely negative results."
Yay!
And I looked at him and I was like, "Holy crap! I gotta call Cynthia," because I really believe that. And what I want to get to here from this is, because this is something that I also teach, as you know, that. But what I got from you, Cynthia, is that it is a process in the mind of physically changing the environment, not allowing it, not hoping, not being, "Oh God, I hope it changes," but saying, "I am taking control of my reality and I'm changing it now."
Right.
And with that energy, with that inflection of yourself, of your entire embodiment, that was a shift for me. And, you know, I got to thank you for that, because that was the piece I was missing. And it's funny because I've been talking to Lori a lot lately, and you guys, we had Lori Nadell on the show, you remember, a couple of months back. So we're working with Lori on a regular basis. And now every time we talk to each other, if we don't like what's going on, we just quantum jump into another reality. So
and it works.
It works. It works.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Tori, because it's so personal but so meaningful.
Yeah.
And I know people can relate to that.
Yeah, to a lot of people out there, what you just went through, let's hope they're listening and they'll go through the same as what you went through, and it'll cure them too, because that is amazing.
Cynthia talks about denying reality, and that's really what it comes down to. It's like if you have a particular reality, and Cynthia, stop me if I'm wrong,
No,
but
you're exactly right.
because reality is not fixed, right? So if you
That's right.
deny the reality and say, this is no longer my reality, I am shifting. I'm sorry, but I'm out of here, guys. That's what it's about. Would that be correct?
So I'm ever since you started talking, I had consistent goosebumps. You know what that tells me? I mean, I tested this, and I want Cynthia's feedback, because my goosebumps are my indication for me that I'm connected to something that's coming from the universe. It's coming from a much bigger reality than my own.
Yes.
Does that?
Because you have a similar experience, don't you, Steve? So that you, in a way, when the diabetes came into your life, you decided that it wasn't going to be a reality.
Yeah, but my project was not instantaneous.
No.
I have a lot more. I have a lot more practice to do, because my project took 2 years to change. And
that's okay though.
Well, sure, it's okay, because I did what I could with what I had, but I am open to my ability to change my own reality within a moment, because I was actually going to ask Cynthia before Tori, you were sharing your story, which was an awesome story. Thank you. I was going to ask you about, we were talking about synchronicities, and I was going to ask you about time and space, how it disappears. Like, that's another indication for me that I'm somehow connected. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense to me as a meditator. And for those of us, and I've also had near-death experience and lucid dreaming, so...
I think you've always been. Yeah, I think we're always connected. It's that just whether we want to find out whether we are or not, or to go in that actual place, is to let go, which is really what it is. It's letting go. We've always got it there. We just don't recognize it.
I think what Steve is getting at is that feeling like you're really, like, it's almost like time has stopped. Like you've got all the time in the world, and you can actually see all the different possibilities.
Yeah, like I have evidence for myself, Cynthia, that time doesn't exist. It really doesn't exist.
Yeah, and it was
interesting when I had lupus. Somebody said to me, "So how long did it take you to get over that when you cured yourself?" And I said, "Oh, really? If I think about it, truthfully, it's about 14 years." And he said, "That's a really long time." I said, "Compared to what?" Like, I would have been dead had I continued down that path. But I decided there was a different picture on the wall, and I'm going to look at that picture every day and say, what can I do today to get back to that? And one day I'm back to that. It's just, and so there was really, I don't know how much time. I had to actually think, how much time went by. And it doesn't really matter. The end result was what I wanted. I think some of this quantum stuff, I feel like I've been doing most of my life, and then when I started to learn it so I could teach it as part of the NLP program, I went, oh my gosh, I've been doing that for a long time. Like, I take on, for example, a multi-level marketing product, and I'll say to the guy, why do I have to go to that level then that level? Because that's so boring. And he said, what do you want to do? And I said, I just want to do a quantum leap right up to the top. And he said, okay, go for it. And so I would. It was really interesting. Or when I'm in China and I decide to help with the earthquake, and I'm thinking, how on earth can I do that when I don't speak a word of Chinese? But it's just like a faith, Cynthia. To me, it was a quantum leap is like an absolute faith that somebody has sent you a task to do. It doesn't matter if it's curing yourself of lupus or helping Chinese or working in Africa. To me, it's irrelevant what the actual thing is, the project is. But when I get that gut feeling that I'm meant to do something, it's that leap of faith. To me, a quantum leap is a leap of faith that you can go ahead and you can do that. And that you can start believing that that can absolutely manifest. Because every time I've done it, it's worked. whether I speak a word of Chinese or not.
Yeah, the way I describe it is like looking at the fuel gauge on the car, and if you know, like on the side where it's empty, that's where you're wanting something. On the side where it's full, that's belief, that's faith. And you can actually see the results when people do studies in the placebo effect, for example, and notice that people, I mean, the placebo effect has doubled in the last 30 years, but if you take a look at people of faith, now these are people who believe, and you can even tell them, like they could tell me, you're in the placebo group, and lots of people in the placebo group do great. I'll be one of those who get the 70% improvement results, because I know the placebo really works. To me, that's not like bogus sugar pills and fake medicine. It's the power of belief. And all I need is a reminder of it, and wow, I'm there.
Can you give a good example out there of something that you actually did and it actually sort of
Yes.
so that our audience will know exactly what we're kind of talking about and where we're going with all this? You give a good example.
Well, I'll have a couple of them. One just happened last week. I was teaching a workshop in the Middle East, and during the workshop, one of the attendees was very concerned about a relative with Alzheimer's and was asking, right now there's no cure for Alzheimer's, she told me. This is like a week ago. And basically at that point that was true. And what I told her is, well, let's not let that stop us, because what we can believe things that are within our range of what we think is believable, which is sometimes why lupus might take 14 years, which is really fast if you're the first person with lupus who completely cures it. But now that we're starting to learn that we can do these things even faster, by the time I got back to California and was checking the news, I just got an item that came in saying that Alzheimer's is now curable. So I immediately sent that back to the people in the Middle East, because that's the kind of thing that can happen. I was explaining lots of things are possible. So your relative might find out that she was misdiagnosed, or there might be some amazing cure found for Alzheimer's, which is exactly what happened. And it's really straightforward, simple, it's not too expensive. Boom, it's like you've got it. And I think a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that they're locked into a reality. In my personal life, I've seen much more dramatic shifts, including that my dog was quite elderly. He just passed away this last week, but he was 16 and a quarter, so it's quite old for a huge dog. He was 80 pounds, beautiful heart, good spirit, but about 7 years ago, he started getting cataracts in his eyes, or a number of years ago. And every time it started happening, just like Tori said, I would say, no, no, I love this dog too much. He's not going to go blind. He's not going to get cataracts. And it would clear up. And then my sweetie would see the dog and say, oh, I've got bad news for you, Cynthia. The dog is getting cataracts. And I'd explain, no. It looks like he's getting cataracts, and then it goes away. And then my sweetie's like, oh, okay. Because, this is the home of quantum jumping here, so this is what we do. And sure enough, the cataracts, they came and went a couple times and then never came back again. And the same thing with the hip dysplasia. His breed is very similar to German Shepherd, like a Belgian Tervuren, kind of a long-haired German Shepherd-sized dog, and his hips went out about 7 years ago. But again, I just had that, no, this can't be happening response. And he didn't need to see a veterinarian or anything. It was just a matter of he was fine, and it never recurred, which is quite remarkable.
What's really interesting, Cynthia, is that I've been struggling with this question for 2 years, 3 years now, and I do a lot of course development work. And I'm a great fan of Bruce Lipton and Biology of Belief. And the big question that I always have is, how do you change an individual's belief, right? Because an individual's belief is going to determine the reality. So if that individual goes to the doctor and the doctor says, okay, you have incurable cancer, but this blue pill is going to make it go away, we know that through studies that there's a good chance that that blue pill is going to make an incurable cancer go away. But in the real world, if you're not sick and you don't go to the doctor and there's no blue pill, and you are aware of all of the things that we're talking about, how do you make that determination? And I think I came up with the solution in the elevator. Thank you to our experience together, because for me it was an emotional experience where I needed to add physicality. And like when I said to you, when I shifted my mind from no longer having prostate cancer, it wasn't like manifesting. Okay, I'm manifesting that it's not there, or I'm manifesting that I want some money, or I'm manifesting that I want a new boat. It was more of a physicality. So in my mind, I was literally, because you said jumping,
Yes.
I was literally jumping, flipping across the floor, and rolling like an idiot.
Yes.
And I would get up. Now, of course, I wasn't doing that. I was in the elevator. But I imagined myself jumping and flipping and standing up and playing a game like a child. And that's when like I said, when I got into the doctor's office, I started moving his shit around the room. I'm sorry. But I was moving his stuff. I was moving his pictures around because why not? I could. Cynthia said I could, so I'm going to. When he said that I didn't have cancer, I'm like, really? Because I sort of knew that already, but thanks, doctor.
Wow.
And you know what I'm trying to impress on anybody that's listening to this, because I struggled with the whole concept of belief, is that whether or not I believed it, I believed that the process of being, and I don't want to use the word aggressive, but the process of moving from one place to another in such a way that if I'm here and if I'm standing here and I have this, if I rapidly move over there, sort of like in a matrix, I won't have it. But if I have it there, I move quickly over there, I won't have it. If I keep moving quickly, faster and faster and faster, faster, back and forth, eventually I can outrun or outperform what's going on in my life. And to this day, I've been telling people constantly, how do you shift belief? You have to shift belief by forcing your mind into another place. And you don't really have to believe it. You have to believe that you can force a change.
Right.
And how do you do that? You have to do it. You just have to do it.
And
So
that's
this is about thoughts, though, isn't it? Isn't this about really believing in, the thought process? So whatever thought
well,
for the
actually,
viewers out there, whatever
I would
thought
agree with
you
Corey.
have.
It starts with the thoughts, but there's a 3-step process, and the third step is you take action. You jump into that reality. You literally do. And many of the laboratory-tested examples that I provide in my book and workshops, it's all about, like, here's one. You can point at your head. This is actually proven to make people smarter and score higher on tests. Just by pointing your fingers at your head, it's doing something. And there's this entire field now in psychology called embodied cognition, which has to do with things that are like stretching arms out, and that increases the testosterone, decreases cortisol, the stress hormone. And so you're jumping into the reality where you have confidence. And you can do the same thing.
When you're happy. Usually when you're happy, you do things like that.
But now they're learning that you can do it the other way around. You do the action first. You smile, you stick a pen in your mouth and turn the corners of your mouth up like that. And those people will laugh at jokes even if they were depressed to begin with. You can make a fist and stick with something and have willpower. You can open your fingers and have willpower. I've had dozens of these examples in the book, and this is what Tori is talking about. When I do a workshop, I talk about all these different examples, and it's absolutely having to do with taking an action. So Tori's exactly right. I think that what a lot of people do when they think it's just in their head, maybe their imagination isn't quite good enough to get the results that some of us do. Like some people, like yourself, you did great with lupus, and sometimes it's possible for someone who meditates a lot to get those kind of results. A lot of other people get frustrated, and they feel like they've hit a brick wall. And so for them, you can actually, in a workshop, I'll have people jump up and skip around the room to feel this vitality that comes through when you do that process, again, from these new fields in embodied cognition. So these are wonderful, fresh studies that are coming together. So we've got quantum biology, embodied cognition, quantum physics, quantum computing, and it's all bringing this together for us to start seeing, kind of like the man behind the curtain. You can start seeing what's really going on is that we are consciousness, and we're the ones always making that jump into.
So you're saying we're going to start seeing the architect?
Yeah.
That was from the That was from the Matrix. All right, so Cynthia.
Realizing we are the architect.
Yes. So Cynthia, I'm curious about through this this new radical paradigm, what's possible in terms of awakening some of our abilities that a lot of us are not open to, like let's say I'll just give an example: remote viewing. I believe that everybody is capable of remote viewing, but because we're not open to it, and it's not part of our current reality, we just don't do it.
Right.
So do you feel that as this field opens up more and more people are beginning to, I don't want to use the word believe, because for what it's worth, the way I got rid of a lot of my beliefs is just recognizing that they weren't even mine. There were somebody else's, and I know whose there were, and I bought it, hook, line, and sinker, without questioning it.
So, Steve, you were starting to trust yourself.
Yeah, instead of buying somebody else's belief, because there's just so much stuff going on. I mean, this is part of the, I feel, the part of the confusion. I mean, I love the internet. Don't get me wrong, because without it, we couldn't even be doing this. But there are some quote-unquote side effects from the internet. And one is that there is so much garbage on the internet, and people are, people don't just immediately believe themselves. People have to have proof, Like, I don't have to have proof what it means that I'm getting a signal that I have, I am in the presence of some frequency and energy that's directing me to that something is coming right now. Something is being channeled to me through the universe. Do you understand? I don't need proof. I have it.
You know it. You know it.
I
now.
know it. It's unquestionable. I don't need to go on the internet and Google this stuff and find out who says what it is and who says what it isn't, because you can keep doing that and you're going to be running circles.
Well, because you're believing in somebody else, not yourself. You're listening to somebody else's thoughts on you. They don't even know you.
Right.
Really?
What do you think about that, Cynthia? All this information that we have out there?
Well, you raised a couple of good points. First one, I'm trying to remember how you put it, but it was just the idea of how many different wonderful skills and talents and abilities might we have along the line.
That are hidden right now because we're not open. Yes.
Yeah, and so a lot of I think that if you hear about people that have extraordinary abilities, I think those are actually quite natural and normal. And what we've been experiencing is a kind of a narrow frequency range of what humans are expected and supposedly able to do. I know we're seeing that right now with the placebo effect that I mentioned before. It used to be, I think originally when doctors would do or not doctors, but the people doing the medical studies wanted to compare some kind of treatment with a placebo. Placebo means I shall please, and the idea was that inert substance has no healing power, so it's expected to have a 0% effect. Over the years, that so-called 0% effect is now more like 30% among the general populace, sometimes 50%. And for people of faith who maybe don't like the word believe, but if they meditate, if they're tuned into the goosebump feeling, they can get results in the 70 and higher % range. And that is blowing the socks off of academia right now. So Harvard Medical Center and Harvard University has a new placebo studies program. And millions of dollars are being spent on this right now to find out what's going on and what's possible. So I'm using this as an example. And I love your example of remote viewing, but I believe we'll start understanding intuition is normal, telepathy is normal, getting things like future memory, where you remember something that hasn't happened yet, is normal. Because with quantum logic, time is a two-way gate. So it's two-directional, and you can actually get retrodictive results, which instead of a prediction, which is like a 50-50 accuracy, scientists are now getting retrodiction results involving the quantum effect, where they can look back from the answer and see how it got there by looking gently and softly. And then now they've got 90% accuracy. So, in other words, things that you and I have been familiar with through intuition and dreams and precognition, all of these things are going to be increasingly considered normal.
So how would you
So exciting for
Go ahead.
who are already practicing this every single solitary day. It's amazing. I mean, just look at small children, and they are so tuned into all of this. And it is the most natural way that they move about the world. So it's, yeah.
Until they get older, and then all this other stuff pours into their heads, and
Well, but maybe that won't happen. Maybe,
it
you
won't
know,
happen
that,
anymore. Yeah, you're right.
so,
Because they're beautiful. They're natural. They're normal. They don't think what's going to happen, why, what. That's why we're always saying, be careful, don't do this. And, we're always putting that down.
You know what's
It
also
almost
really
occurs to
interesting
me.
now?
Yes. I yield respectfully.
Sorry?
I was talking about placebo effect of animal studies. Now, I don't know if you have any animals that are smart enough to know that they're getting placebo versus a real medication, but science knows that placebos work on humans even if the human believes it's a placebo. So it doesn't matter whether it's a real narcotic or a placebo, we still get better by taking a placebo. So now what's really interesting is that when we give a placebo to an animal, now if we realize that the placebo is a placebo, I really don't think the animal realizes the placebo. So what is affecting the change in the animal's health? Is it the placebo? Is it our belief system changing or quantum jumping the animal into a new place in reality? I mean, this stuff gets crazy.
I know. Well, let's take a look at the dogs that had osteoarthritis. Those were the studies that you might be referring to, and those were double-blind, FDA-approved trials, and the owners of the dogs were given the placebo, which was a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory medication. And what happened is these dogs, you're right, Tori, they were getting a placebo, so how do they know? And the owner doesn't even know. That's what's really tricky. We're getting into that gold standard of placebo trialist, where nobody really knew.
But maybe animals are much more conscious than we are. How about that?
Well, that's where I was going to thank you. You're right on the money, because when you look at what's going on in the quantum biology realm of plants that are photosynthesizing,
because they're not in the time and space tramp.
Yeah, they're not conscious in the way we think of consciousness. They don't compose concerts that we would go to and make paintings and so forth, but they're able to be in the high 90% efficiency range for photosynthesis. So they're using quantum processing, absolutely. And that's not even controversial. Everybody agrees with that. And it looks like all of the human senses are also operating under quantum biological processes as well. So we're having macroscopic, large-scale effects of quantum, effects for ourselves. And so then if you look at nature, dogs, for example, you're right. They can therefore know when their owners are coming home because they're entangled at a very deep level. They're feeling that feeling.
Oh, they're feeling, yeah, absolutely.
And they can feel positive into the future that when their owner finds out, wow, you got the placebo and it really worked. The owner has that hopeful expectation. You're getting better.
They don't recognize time, right? They don't recognize time or space, for that matter. They are the perfect examples. When I look at my cat and my dog, when I look at them, they know exactly how to live in the present moment, because they don't have to worry about the past, nor do they, or the future. They're just in the moment, like, pet me now.
Pet me now.
Walk me now.
And they get it all. It's all given to them.
I want to share a story with you guys. I have a friend of mine who has a child who's he's somewhat mentally handicapped, and he got up at 3 o'clock in the morning about a year ago, and my friend got up with him again. This is like the third time in a row in a week, and he says, "All right, Ian, you tell me what time it is," because he goes, "Dad, it's time to get up. It's time to get up." He goes, "If you can tell me what time it is, then we'll get up." And he looks at his father and he goes, "It's breakfast time." So,
That's brilliant.
My friend's house, and he looked at him,
That's breakfast.
he burst out laughing, and he goes, "All right, son, it's breakfast."
3 o'clock in the morning, he's having breakfast.
We do that when we come to America, Tori, when we were did the live show in Denver 18 months ago. My father and we woke up in the hotel, and it was always 3 o'clock in the morning. And in the end, I was sick of being polite, and I said, "Is anyone else awake?" And they all said, "Yeah, we are." I said, "Okay, it's party time."
So I just want to get some feedback from Cynthia about this quantum computer that Google and NASA is working on, and what you know about it, or what you know that's going to make possible. I mean, some of the things that I'm hearing about it is calculations that used to take, with supercomputers, used to take years. It will take just a couple of hours. Where are we heading?
Right. Well, this is actually kind of one of those slow processes. So if people are watching and they want that quantum computer on their desk now, it's not going to be ready for Christmas. So I'll just say it. Because actually the adiabatic processing that's being utilized for the D-Wave is kind of new, and we don't even currently have the programmers with the correct mindset of the very same things we're talking about on this show as what we need the new programmers to be thinking along the lines of. And right now, all of
the input is not advanced enough.
Yeah, they were raised with classical computing. It's rational reductionist science, and this idea that Boolean logic is all there is. So in other words, it's someone's guilty or they're innocent. Something is true or it's false. But in quantum logic, that's not the way it works at all. There's much more of a rainbow zone. I'm not even going to say a gray zone. You know, there's shades of color everywhere, and that's what the real quantum logic is like. It's so vast. And so to that end, where things are going right now with forward progress, the programmers know this. NASA knows that we've got that issue with the mindset of the people. Very thing we were talking about before the show started today. You know, people matter. And what's happening is the future is with our children. And so there's a new QCraft module for the very popular game Minecraft, which I've heard about it. And the QCraft component is set up, it's kind of like playing a computer game where children, and actually anybody, you don't have to be a child, can learn how to just get comfortable with things like superposition of states, where something is kind of in several places at once, with this coherence, where a whole group of building blocks move together, with teleportation, where something can just be in one spot in space and time and suddenly be somewhere else. And with that kind of coherence, entanglement, superposition, all these things happening at the same time. I don't know that they've got the two-directional time gate, but they've got quite a bit of it. And so the idea, the hope, is that the programmers of the future are starting to learn how to think the way quantum logic really works in the natural world. Actually, nature is already doing this, and the biologists are starting to learn about it too. So it's just a very special moment when some of the most exciting work being done in physics is coming out of philosophy, actually, like the work being done at Perimeter Institute, where they've written, some scientists have written a paper about how classical logic is pretty much dead because it's just a very small subset of the bigger quantum logic. And the philosophers they're fearless. They're able to use just clear-cutting logic and just sort of rip apart the old assumptions that we have about reality that we already know are completely false. Things like, you know, I'm not going to get too technical, but just for people who are listening, we know now that matter is not all that matters. You have to work with probabilities. The observer has an effect. Those kind of things.
Are more of the younger generation getting involved in all this? It seems like, because their minds are far more open, they haven't got all that. They've been brought up with a computer since the beginning of birth, and they've come into this realm, whereas myself, I haven't. So are the younger generation starting to really move into this and realizing what can happen and what they can do?
I see that is the case. You know, the people that I've got daughters who are in their 20s, and people of that generation who are now graduating from college, starting PhD programs. They're very open-minded about a lot of this. That I know for sure that when I was their age, that was not common at all. You know, for my generation.
Because that's what I see. I see the younger generation, and I don't see us recognizing it as much as we should recognize it. We're always sort of, you know, they're stupid, they're idiots, and they don't know what they're doing. But that's totally the opposite. They know more what they're doing now, but they don't actually have to do it physically. They're doing it more mentally.
Right. And I think playing games is the best way to start. So I'm so glad that they've got that game, that QCraft, and it's free. The component is free. So if you're playing Minecraft already, go out and get QCraft.
The games have been going on for a long time, though. I was at a convention one time, and an old Indian talked about back in the 1800s what they used to do with the young warriors. They would bring them out into the forest, and they would have them close their eyes and meditate around trees, and they would have them in front of 5 different trees. You might have heard the story before. And they each took their turn putting their hand inside the tree, feeling the inside of the tree, and then taking their hand out. And then they had to determine which tree was the hardest tree. And time again, every single child was able to determine which was the hardest tree, which was the softest tree, talking about elms, pines, oaks, and trees of that nature. So, you know, 100 years ago, before technology came into our world and made things complicated, I think the simplicity, I think what we're talking about is really simple. It's not that we complicated our lives so much, is that we distracted ourselves. You know, I'm 54 years old, and the last thing that I would have thought, Cynthia, before I met you, would me be imagining myself jumping in the elevator and doing flips, seriously, on the way to the doctor's office. I mean, who does that, right? But I realized, okay, I have to do something physical here, because I'm not going to do this through manifestation. I'm not.
Right.
So I'm just going to roll down the hallway into the doctor's office, so like a centipede, and just stand up. So, you know, when you talk about a child's mind where you have the curiosity or the ability to be able to do anything you want or anything that you believe is possible, right, I believe is a key to success in all that we're talking about. So when you're going to talk about a quantum world, I believe there was a quantum world 500 years ago that we weren't aware of. And I think today, if anything, we lost some of it.
No, you're exactly right. I just read this great book by Glenn Apasio Perry, and he wrote a book called Original Thinking. And he was one of the organizers of a conference I used to go to, The Language of Spirit, and there would be indigenous elders, physicists. David Bohm started the group originally, and linguists. And you're totally spot on, Tori, because what's happening, or what used to happen in those group meetings, the gatherings, the dialogues, is that one person would talk, and a collective mind would form. And so it was an experiential phenomenon of being in that indigenous collective, where the idea of original thought is that there are no new ideas. In the West, we tend to think, oh, we've got a new idea, let's patent it, let's own it. That's not the way the indigenous people think about it. They know for sure it's already there. And that matches exactly 100% spot on. One of my favorite physicists right now at UC Berkeley, Dr. Yasunori Nomura, who wrote about the static quantum multiverse. In other words, there's no beginning, there's no end, and the vast infinity that we think of in terms of infinite space, when you look at the night sky, it's real. The infinity, the true infinity, is the probability fields that are out there. This is also what the indigenous elders have always known. It's and the book I'm mentioning is called Original Thinking. I really recommend it because it gives you. If people don't know what Tori's talking about, and it sounds amazing, it is amazing. And
I'm familiar with the book, and if you look back through history, there's another book, and forgive me, I don't remember the name of it, but almost every major invention that's ever been developed was being developed multiple times at the same exact time, right, and it's at multiple places in the world. How does that happen? So an idea becomes born everywhere simultaneously.
That's right.
Is that just luck of the draw, or is there
consciousness?
Yeah.
It's a collective consciousness. But this conversation is so exciting and hopefully not freaking our audience out, but giving people a sense of how amazing
okay
our
if it
life
freaks them
can
out.
be. Well, because it's like, it's just, it's so unlimited, what we're able to live right now. It's so exciting. It really is. So, yeah.
So thank you. Uh, Jamie, I just wanted to, before the show ends, I wanted to share a real quick experience I had and get some feedback from our guest. This is going back probably at least 15 years, and I didn't even know the word quantum back then. So the experience that I had is I was meditating with someone long distance. I was meditating with someone in Spain, and I was here in the U.S., and she put on some music, and we were doing it through Skype and or some other software, I don't know. But we were doing it, and she went somewhere, and in her meditation, I went to the same place, and I could actually see her in her meditation and my meditation, and I could see the surroundings. And when our meditation was over, I shared with her where I saw her, and I described everything that was around, and she said that was exactly right on. What would you say that was? Because I never forgot the experience. I still have it vividly.
Well, from the energy standpoint and the physics of it, keep in mind that people can entangle with one another, and you can become coherent. So with something like music, with meditation, you can enter, and the voices, if you're hearing each other's voices, then I've had the same experience you're talking about, by the way.
Oh wow.
I was sending an email to a gentleman in Australia who was a remote viewer and astral traveler, and I could tell when he showed up in my house, and so I took him on a tour outdoors. I could see his spectral body, and then I asked him to describe what he smelled and saw, and I typed up what I'd shown him, and it was a really good match. So yes, what's going on is you're able to entangle based on the focus of your consciousness and your intent with another. And so we humans are much more facile at this than we give ourselves credit for. I've been able to entangle with people and animals that I've just met for the first time. And so it's not like you need to know someone for years and years and years. It's much more a matter of just that sense of instant connection. We talk about chemistry in the movies, but you can feel it when it's happening between yourself and someone else. And when it happens, then you can start getting a tremendous amount of information. And when you're open and you're meditating, then your channels are wide open. And you're closing your eyes so you can really see, you get that full, fresh impression of everything going on around. And you can totally go to the same place. And people share lucid dreams the same way. So this is a phenomenon that's well documented. I've experienced it. I think a lot of viewers have probably experienced it.
Fantastic.
Very cool. Yeah.
Cynthia, you were absolutely fantastic, and thank you for bringing this theme, quantum jumps can improve your life, because it's a radical subject right now, and I hope that very soon this will be everyday conversation with as many humans as possible, because this is what's going to move us along in the field of consciousness. So thank you so much for bringing this to the network. You were absolutely fantastic and really easy. I mean, I'm getting the goosebumps again.
Well, thank you
and thank
so
you for
much.
the cast.
I had a great
Everybody contributed. It was absolutely awesome. Thank you for being here. Everybody have a great night. And for everybody out there that was watching or will be watching in the future, if anything that our guest Cynthia Sue Larson has said here today touched, moved, and inspired you, please continue to come to consciousrevolutionmedia.com. Go to our YouTube page. Keep watching this show and other shows. The more you watch them, the more they will get to the top 10 every month, and the more possibility we have to take them to public television. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Wonderful. Thank you, Cynthia. Bye, guys.
Everybody,
Bye.
good night, good afternoon, good morning.